A simple rule with major consequences. When it comes to time travel, the butterfly effect essentially is that small changes can eventually result in larger changes. Change something small in the past, and you could end up having a completely different future. The butterfly effect itself is not necessarily a paradox. However, paradoxes often occur within various timelines due to not following the butterfly effect or inconsistently following the butterfly effect. If we were to look at the idea in a vacuum, timelines would be immediately rewritten as soon as somebody travels to the past, because just them being there more than likely would trigger some sort of a small change, which would eventually butterfly effect into a larger change down the road. And if that change is big enough, it would eventually result in a future where the time traveler wouldn't exist, and if they can't exist, how did they travel back in time to change the past to begin with? Different timelines have different ways of handling the butterfly effect. Some timelines simply follow the substantial change clause and resist the butterfly effect by holding to a system that doesn't change drastically in response to small changes. This is especially true in a dynamic timeline, where changes in the past result in changes in the future. And a perfectly consistent dynamic timeline would be completely rewritten if it follows the butterfly effect consistently. Or it would get stuck in a loop trying to constantly undo the time traveler's affairs, but not undoing it enough for it to really resolve anything. In a fragile timeline, the paradox would simply destroy the entire timeline. Since the timeline is fragile, it doesn't have any way to cope with the paradox created by the time traveler paradoxically triggering the butterfly effect. In a branching timeline, the butterfly effect can actually be applied perfectly, because whenever someone goes back in time in a branching timeline system, a new branch is generated. So if the entirety of history is rewritten in that new branch, it has no impact on the time traveler or on the main timeline, because it's a separate branch of time. This is also technically true in a predestined timeline, except there's a single branch, and whatever changes were made by the time traveler going back in time and triggering the butterfly effect were technically always there. Since all time is concurrent in a predestined timeline system, the butterfly effect was accounted for since the beginning. There was no rewrite or change. Although this may also trigger a bootstrap paradox, since the butterfly effect happening in the first place might be necessary for the time traveler to exist later in order for them to go back in time to cause the butterfly effect to begin with. Overall, while the butterfly effect itself is not a paradox, it easily has the power to produce a paradox.